Hello, I'm David, and very warm welcome to today's edition of People and Politics. If you've not done so, please subscribe to the show. I say that at the start of every episode because it really helps. So, in last week's budget, of course, one of the most debated issues was welfare benefit. So joining me on today's show is Helen Whately MP, the Shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions. Uh, Welfare, just because of my personal circumstances, has always been a topic that I've been interested in and close to my heart. So I'm really looking forward to today's interview. So here we go. Welcome to People and Politics. Helen, thank you very much for your time today. It's lovely to meet you.
It's lovely to meet you too. Thank you for inviting me on.
And no, so I've been really looking forward to talking to you. And when I do these podcasts, I try not to make them about myself, but I think I'm gonna struggle today because disability, employment, lack of it's not really close to my heart. So I'm gonna play and not talk about my own stuff, but we'll see how it goes anyway. But I've been I've been drinking from the fountain of knowledge, which is Wikipedia. Uh, and it says that you went to Oxford to do medicine because I think both your parents were medics, and so healthcare has been certainly close to your heart for most of your career. Is that right?
You're absolutely right about that. So yeah, both of my parents were doctors, and I thought really hard about following in their footsteps and becoming a doctor too. But because they were doctors, I spent quite a lot of time in hospitals. Whether it was, going around with my dad on a Christmas day as he visited the wards where he had patients, or actually doing work experience. And I came to the decision that I didn't want to be a doctor. I wanted to make the NHS itself better. And so that's the career path that I set off on, in part working as a management consultant with hospitals to improve them. And then also coming into politics, because actually what I saw was the big decisions for healthcare was made by the politicians. So I thought if you really want to change something and fix it, then you need to become a politician.
Yeah, of course, healthcare is totally dominated by politics and the government politics. And it carries on, there's a reason I said that, and that was because, according to the IFS, in April, 600,000 children could be lifted out of poverty. And I'm sure that you understand better than everybody the link between poverty and health and poor health. And I'm very aware the party have opposed that lift and child benefit. I'm wondering, and I wonder why, but people are saying it could really tackle poverty, because I think you agree, poverty is epidemic levels in this country that we've not seen for decades. And how are we going to tackle poverty?
It's a really good and important question, and of course I care hugely about poverty, whether it's a link with people's health, but also, and thinking for children, the connection between poverty and the opportunities that they get in their lives and the quality of life that they can look forward to. But yes, to the question of the two-child benefits cap, I have opposed that, and Conservatives are opposing that, because although, as you said, statistically, it looks like, oh, well, if you lift that, then you suddenly have many thousands of children lifted out of poverty. The reality is that we know that actually what makes the best and biggest difference to a child's chances in life is whether they've got a parent in work.
Yeah.
And so, yes, you can make the statistics look better, but are you really changing the circumstances of that child's upbringing and the prospects for them of being able to do more with their life? And we know that the thing that really makes the difference is whether they've got a parent in work. And actually lifting the two-child cap means that they're less likely to have a parent in work. And we know, and there's evidence from other countries, which is that by doing something like this, you will actually likely see some parents stop working. And so you won't still have that potential for children's lives to be improved by their having a parent in work. So actually, I don't see this extra 3 billion, a bit more than that, to be spent on children to lift the two-child cap as being the right answer to the problem of giving children a better chance in life.
So I guess a part of the premise of that argument is that if it's too easy to get benefits, people don't go to work because they're disincentive and they don't have the money. So I think that not just that premises with you. And also, what do you think of the argument that, a lot of these families, something like 69% of people on university are already working. So you're not giving the money to people who are lying at home. It's money to help people who are already struggling with the cost of living, particularly over the last 2 3 years since energy, food bills have spiraled, and and salaries have not increased at a similar rate.
Well, I think two things to that. So yes, it's true that many people on universal credit are working. I mean, that's the nature of the taper, and it was designed so that it wouldn't discourage work. So rather than it being, okay, you're in work, you don't get benefits, it's that the more you work, the less benefits you get, but trying to reduce it at a rate that doesn't discourage work. But the fact is, actually, many of the people who are working, they're not working necessarily very many hours. So that is one of the factors, is actually somebody might only be working for, say, a couple of days a week. It's and there's a particular threshold that people talk about, the 16 hours threshold. So that's one factor there. The other thing is, there are also families who are not receiving universal credit who are really struggling to pay their bills. And this is the problem that we've got to with our tax levels being so high, is you've got people who are not on very high incomes who are going to actually see themselves worse off from this budget, who are also going, well, can I afford the children that I've got? Can I afford to have another child? Maybe they've got one child and they're considering, can they afford another? Or you've got a couple who might like to have a family going, we just can't afford it. And we don't want to be people who are living off benefits. We want to be people who are paying our own way, and they're literally making the decision, and we cannot afford to have children. And so this system involves putting the taxes up to pay for those, for people who are on benefits to get more, but then you'll have families who don't receive benefits going, literally, I can't afford to have any children. We don't want that to be the case. And so for me, A, it's not the right answer to improve children's life chances, and B, it's not fair on those people that you're asking to pay even more in. And you've got some extraordinary things where some of the figures that came from the Centre out for the Centre for Social Justice over the weekend, which is that in order to be on the equivalent income of a family, I think it was with three children receiving an income through benefits, you'd need to be earning £70,000. For a family of five, you'd be needing to be earning £90,000 to have the equivalent income. I mean,
Yeah.
this is just crazy.
But yeah, it's good, and I mean, that has to stop. Would it not have been fairer to say, okay, we're gonna stop it, we're gonna fit it out because so if your child is born after a certain date and they're the third child, they're not gonna receive benefit if it's so you phase it out over time rather than just say we're going to cut benefit for the third
Well, when the two-child
child.
cap was introduced, it was over time, so it didn't affect children who'd already been born. It was done in that way, so that it didn't say, oh, well, you've already had several children and now you're not going to get the support. It was a phased-in
Yeah,
approach in that way.
it's so difficult, isn't it? And when I wanted to ask you about language, if you don't mind, because when
Mm.
Kevin Pinlock gave her response to the Chancellor's speech, she she spoke about putting up taxes to pay for Benefit Street, and work with households. And I wonder if you were comfortable with that sort of language because it sounds pretty derogatory to me and quite,
Mm.
yeah, not the best that she could have come up with.
I think she's reflecting an anger that people are feeling. And I clearly talk to loads of people as a member of parliament. Around the country, I go on visits. I also, luckily in my constituency, speak to people. And people are feeling very angry that they're being taxed so much. And they're also seeing people abusing the system, whether it's TikTok videos of somebody going, "Woohoo! I've got my Motability car for free. Isn't this great?" It's or people will know somebody in their street who seems to be living a better lifestyle than them, and you've got somebody who in one house is getting up early in the morning, going to work, maybe doing every extra shifts, um, trying to juggle all that work with kids and just about making ends meet, and then somebody next door to them not going to work and having a better lifestyle, and people are really feeling angry about that. The other thing which I think is, makes me think of is, so I visited a business in Stockton upon Tees a couple of months ago, and it's a lift installation business, and they do apprenticeships. They offer some great apprenticeships. They take young people straight out of school if they want to, and you can earn where you learn. You get a good training, and it's a decent job with a decent income. But they haven't managed to fill all their apprenticeships. They've got, I think, about 25 available. And I said to them, sort of, how come, basically? Is there it's not like there's full employment there. So this is a town where there are several thousand people who are unemployed. And in fact, like literally down the road from where this business is located is an estate where the documentary was it in the 1990s, the kind of Benefit Street documentary was made,
Yeah.
literally there. And they said to me, like, they know that there are people in that estate who are not working, who are living off benefits, who could be applying for their apprenticeships and getting that training, but the incentives don't stack up for them to do that. And so they're not. So you've got a business that on the one hand is struggling to recruit, and on the other hand, a group of people who are choosing not to put themselves forward for those jobs. And then you've got people who are paying taxes going, I'm just feeling poorer and poorer. My
That's
taxes
not
are so
fair.
high. Why
Yeah,
should I
yeah,
bother to work? It's not fair. So that's what the government needs to fix. And I mean, to me, and this is, what Kemi was articulating in her response to the budget, is the government is just not gripping this. And it's not fair to people who are trying to work, trying to save, trying to make sacrifices. They're seeing so much of the money that they earn being taken in taxes.
yeah,
It's also not right for the people who are, living off benefits who could be working, because
yeah,
from day to day that might seem like a perfectly okay way of life, but actually over a lifetime you're not going to improve your circumstance. If you have kids, you're
oh,
not going to give your kids a good upbringing. You're not going to give them a good start in life. You're certainly not going to put anything aside for your old age. You're going to be completely reliant on the state when you retirement age. um and even if you are struggling with your health, and we've seen a lot of people clearly struggling with their mental health, and that being the reason for going on sickness benefits, well, you're often much better mentally to be in work rather than
yeah,
just on
that's
benefits.
right.
But the way the whole system is geared at the moment is, unfortunately, that for many people, they seem to be better off not working.
Yeah, as you're talking, as soon as I thought about the program in the in the 2000 whatever called Benefit Street, and
Yeah.
it was called that because it's a very divisive, and it's a title and divides people, and it turns people against people, people who are working and supposedly doing the right thing against the people who are on welfare. The difficulty I think that I have with it is it kind of lumps everybody in the same boat.
Mm.
People are on welfare. It's like like it's almost like anybody on welfare is undeserving, should be getting it. And of course, there are people in those estates who need to get and to get off their behinds and get a job. But there's a lot of people. But there's also a lot of people who need the state and who need the respect
Mm-hmm.
and dignity that the welfare system provides, and we have to.
I don't
I
think.
think it's a, and I think it's a difficult balance.
Yeah.
So when I hear people using that language, it just jars slightly because I think it puts everybody in the same boat.
But I think, I mean, where I am on it, and I think is where loads of the public are, is people want there to be help for those who need it. Um,
Uh,
Pretty much everybody I talk
yeah,
to would be with me on this. Is like, when somebody is seriously disabled, we want there to be help. But people are losing faith in our welfare system because they feel it is not distinguishing between those who are seriously disabled and should get help
yeah,
and
yeah,
those who actually should be out working and paying their way. And unless the government gets a grip on the growth of the welfare bill, you put at risk the help for people who really need it. You put at risk that help. Firstly, because people
yeah,
start saying, you know what, I just don't want to keep paying into this system because I feel it's not being careful enough with my money. And secondly, you start killing the economy with the levels of tax. So you can't afford to help those who need it either. Being able to help people depends on us having a strong economy. And everything the
yeah,
government has done, this budget and the previous budget, has been damaging to the economy. And so, at some point, the logical conclusion of this is you get to a point where, however much people might want to help, you can't afford it because you've killed your economy. So that's why, the government has to get a grip of this. But they show no sign of being able to do so.
well, no, they don't. I'm very conscious that, they say that you get growth by putting money in people's pockets. And Rachel Reese did none of that last week.
Mm.
She did the quite opposite. She took money out of people's pockets, and growth was downgraded the night before. And it was hardly spoken about in the budget. So you get growth by putting money into people's pockets, and that's not what she did. Uh,
Mm.
I think I'm right in saying that you've been in the job as in this current position for about a month just. So and I think yourself and Master right has spoken about taking 23 billion out of the welfare budget. And I wonder what your plan for welfare would be and how you would go about doing that.
It's a really good question because I mean, as we were just talking, I want the welfare system to be there, as a safety net. That was the idea that it started off with, is you want there to be some help for people who really badly need it, disabled, fallen into, ill health, something has happened,
Yeah,
um, and help in those circumstances. And what we've got instead is a system that actually is making it no longer make sense for people to try to work. And it's grown very, very rapidly. Particularly the thing that's grown really rapidly is the sickness benefits bill. And I know that started happening under us. It kind of started happening in the pandemic time and then going on up. And
post COVID.
yes. And although when we were in government, we had plans to turn that around, we kind of ran out of time because it happened towards the later time of our period in government, as I said, COVID. And what was particularly driving that was the rise in people claiming for reasons of mental health. So
Yeah,
something has gone very wrong, in the sense of that rate of increase, which is faster than the evidence tells us of what's going actually wrong with people's actual
yeah,
health. People aren't getting sicker that much more quickly, but the system isn't working. Um, so one of the things that I've identified that we should do is we actually need to stop having a system that's paying sickness benefit for the lower level mental health problems, whether it's like anxiety, milder depression, or types of neurodiversity like ADHD. People in those situations would usually be better at work. And what you need to do is work out, so does that person need some support to get into work, some help with the job
yeah,
searching process, some support with coping with work? What is it? And do that rather than pay out benefits. Now, the first counter to that, what people could tell me is, well, you hold on, you can get PIP personal independence payments even if you work. They're not affected by whether you work. But the
yeah,
reality from the conversations I have with people is they say they know that, but they still worry that if they're working, they will lose their PIP because that will undermine the argument for their need for the PIP. Like, oh, well, you said you had these problems, so you needed PIP, but actually you clearly don't have those problems because you're managing to work, so you won't get your PIP.
yeah,
I literally know stories of people who have turned down job opportunities or training opportunities because they were worried that that would mean they would lose their PIP because of that in the reassessments. So PIP is unfortunately acting as a disincentive to work, even though it was not designed to be that way. And as I said, we've got this huge growth of people claiming it for mental health reasons. So that is one of the main substantial areas of savings. It's work that I did with Centre for Social Justice, looking at the opportunity that you could save significant money. And as I said, actually, people would be better off being supported into work. So that's around 7 billion of savings you can make from that. Another area of opportunity is looking at the benefits that go to people who are not British. We
yeah,
are spending billions of pounds on the universal credit and sickness benefit for people who are not British citizens. And at a time when the country's struggling financially,
yeah.
that's not something that we could be doing. If somebody's coming here, they've got to be contributing, not somebody who's costing us as a society. So that's another area of savings that I've identified.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to identify when I that I I don't know if he'd agree that, but I think one of the difficulties is that disability get lumped in together with health difficulties, but I think it's part of the problem because as you said, a lot of claimants claim uh, for low level mental health, and they claim PIP. But there's also a lot of disabled people with long term disability who are on the same benefit, and I feel that the two get lumped together. But in some ways they're separate because people with genuine long term disabilities are get that money because for the cost of living that's never gonna get better. But people at low level there's that difference. And that these things could be helped by work. And so I feel that there's got to be a separation there. And it's not fair to belong them all together.
It's a really good point. I mean, I know I don't have all the answers this far into my time as Shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, and in a sort of period of opposition. I don't have all the answers for exactly how a better system needs to work, but I think you've made a really good point there, is that the system isn't distinguishing well enough between people with a lifelong disability and people with a health condition which might well be temporary, where actually say the support could well be something, it might well not be cash that's the answer to help that person. It might well be more about support, treatment, help to improve their situation. I mean, that said, I passionately believe that whether it's that sort of hopefully short time or a lifelong disability, supporting people to work for anyone who can is the right way to go in any event. And I mean, look at you doing this podcast. Work is, on the one hand, yes, it's about paying the bills, but on the other hand, it's also about like the contribution you make, doing something with your life, having an impact. You're leading the way by doing this sort of thing, even overcoming the challenges that life throws at you to make more of it. And to me, that's really worth backing as well.
Well, thank you for what you said. And I said earlier that I didn't want to make about me, but just to give you briefly about me. It's not. I went to medical school, back in the 90s, and I did my MSc in molecular medicine. But I've spent most of my life unemployed because I find it impossible to persuade employers to hire me. And no, I think because of my communication, the way I present, I grew, so I've done this podcast. I've got into this podcast out of frustration because I wanted to work. I spent a decade applying to the civil service, and I spent years and years applying to the National Health Service, and I never got a job. And I have had jobs in the past, but they've been very menial and manual jobs. I've never had more of a kind of cerebral intellectual job in keeping with my education, and that's what needs to take to change. I've led a very, very frustrating existence because I feel that there's so much I could do to contribute, but getting the opportunity is nigh on impossible. So although I'm doing this podcast, I'm not earning that money. I'm on welfare, and I hate being on welfare.
Yeah,
because I feel like I've got so much to offer, and that's so. So when I hear some of that rhetoric and the narrative around sort of welfare, but I do find it jarring, upsetting, and just phenomenally frustrating.
And that's where, where the failure of our, some combination of state and our society to recognize the capabilities of people with disabilities. You said it so well, that nobody's looked beyond the fact that communication for you is hard to what could you absolutely actually contribute. And I hear that. I mean, I hear that from so many disabled people I talk to. I mean, whether it's, as you said, with the communication challenges, or literally, I mean, the other day I was talking to somebody who was in a wheelchair, who was really well qualified for a job, and the employer was just like, "Well, our office is upstairs, so it's not going to work." And he's like, "He really wanted that job," but it's just, and it's just we have to overcome these barriers that are stopping people doing the things that they could be so great at just because of a disability.
And I think you will only overcome the barriers if you start talking to employers like the civil service, like the NHS, big institutions, and say, well, you've got to employ disabled people, because at the moment I think the difficulty is that employers don't have to employ anybody, and they're encouraged to make reasonable adjustments, but the bottom line is they don't have to do anything, and they turn around and say, well, we think this candidate fitted the team a bit better than that, this disabled person. There's nothing you can do about it. And I think that's the difficulty that I face over the years. I've applied for countless roles in the civil service, but they don't have to employ anybody, and they're not going to employ me. And I think you only really change that by a two-pronged approach. Yes, supporting the disabled people themselves, but also you have to get on to employers and say, look, what are you doing?
I think I'm completely with you on both sides of it, disabled people and the employers. I think you wouldn't expect me to go as far as saying sort of like it's a mandation, but to me it's like, how do you make it so it works for the employer, and B, like, so people understand that actually it will work for them. I mean, because some of it it's still the worry. Well, on the one hand, it's a worry. I mean, I know for employers, they're like, well, the insurance costs. What about the risks? There's a ton of things that they're worried about. So you kind of got to help overcome that, and also an understanding that. I mean, I know again though, from talking to employers who have, for instance, employed autistic people, like, this guy's the best employee I have, they'd say, but like, I wouldn't have. I mean, I was talking about the Kickstart scheme, which happened coming out of the pandemic for young people, and an employer there saying, I wouldn't have employed this guy if it wasn't he came through Kickstart. I wouldn't have taken the risk. But actually now, like, he's the best guy in the team. So how do you get people to go from the original perception, employers, I mean, to go from the original perception of, I'm not sure that's going to work, that's going to be too difficult, to actually, this person with a disability might turn out to be the best member of my team. And I know, like, I remember when we were in government, we had a whole disability confidence scheme to try and build up employers' understandings of actually the benefits of employing disabled people and how they shouldn't worry about the risk. It made progress, and there was a period 2014 to 2019 where 50,000 more people every year with disabilities went into work. So it made progress, but the pandemic knocked it back, and it didn't go. It didn't solve the problem. To me, it's picking that up and overcoming the worries of employers, as well as say helping the employee, the job seeker like yourself.
There's been all sorts of schemes over many decades. The post-bad disability scheme, the one that you mentioned, I can't remember its name, but so there's been and the disability confidence scheme. So there's been a lot of schemes like that over a lot of decades. But if you look at economic rates amongst the disabled community across that period, they've not really changed. So there has to be another, problem that's stopping either disabled people are particularly lazy bunch, or there's another problem. And I think we need to look at how we get employers to employ people.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
I think I'm right in saying that before 1995, the DDA came in, that there was a system whereby employers had to, or workforce to employ a certain event, a certain number of disabled people, that wasn't a perfect scheme, but at least it was more measurable, because now if you say to these big employers, how many disabled people do you actually employ? They will say, well, we don't have that information for this reason, that reason, this reason. And I think that's part of the problem. It's not, we need to come up with that measurable scheme for people like the NHS, the civil service, the national banks can say, this is the demand to say people will pay. Maybe.
Well, I'd say one thing I know for sure, David, is it's an area of work that I want to do more in the coming months and years in my job as Shadow Secretary of State, so that we have a better answer for this in time for the next election.
Yeah, sure. I was watching your discussion with Matthew Elliott just before I came on, and I found that really interesting. And he was talking about the number of vacancies that need filled, and that's another thing that frustrates me a lot is when people are saying that we just can't get skilled, educated people to work in this country. And I thought, well, I'm highly educated, and it's impossible, just impossible. So and I said that I wasn't going to make this about me, but I do find it difficult when it comes to talk about employment, because it's hard to articulate. Excuse me. And I find it hard to articulate how frustrated I've been about it. It's phenomenally frustrating.
Well, David, it's hard for you to articulate, but certainly for me, listening to you and watching you in this conversation, it's come through very clearly. I think anyone else listening or watching this could see and hear that too. That both your capabilities and also your deep frustration. I think it's clear, and it's hugely motivating for anyone like me who wants to fix this problem.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed talking to people like yourself, and because people like you're in the position that you can fix it. So I think, I'm sort of privileged for me to talk about it. So just to wrap up, just to say thank you very much indeed for your time. I'm really grateful that you did this with me.
Oh, well, David, thank you for inviting me to come on your podcast and for the conversation that we've had. And I hope we can get to talk again another time. And I look forward to hearing more of your ideas and suggestions for solving these problems.
That'd be great. I hope so too. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Okay.